7 years after the release of Metal Gear Solid 4, a game that seemingly saved the PlayStation 3 from quickly disappearing into obscurity, Kojima and company are back for Snake's swan song, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Or is that V? And really, does it even matter? It's not just Snake's curtain call, but Kojima's as well, since his departure from Konami ensures he'll never make another Metal Gear Solid game again. And with so many questions still lingering after the final credits roll, it's anyone's guess as to how convoluted the story will get as others take the helm and attempt to milk this franchise for every penny they can while the rest of Konami focuses their efforts on pachinko machines. The Phantom Pain is undeniably one of the most fun games I've played this generation. Even after pumping 70 hours into it, I still find myself coming back on a weekly basis to recruit more soldiers into my ever-growing army of Diamond Dogs. But let's back up before we get too far ahead of ourselves. The original Metal Gear Solid set a new benchmark for presentation, and while the stories in this series have been hit or miss, one thing's for sure, they're always talked about. And the Phantom Pain might end up being the most discussed in the franchise's history. A warning though, this game has been out for 3 months, so this review won't be spoiler sensitive. You start the game in a coma, and after what seems like 3 hours of a tutorial, mostly crawling on the floor, you escape from a hospital where your face was to be swapped with John Travolta's so that you can ogle his daughter, and feel moderately awkward when you're visiting his dead son's grave knowing that you killed him during the infamous Carousel Massacre of 1996. It's possible I'm mixing up the Phantom Pain with something else, but I would be surprised if Kojima wasn't a fan of Face Off, the highly and strangely praised John Woo film from 1997. Although in fairness, swapping faces is the kind of crazy shit Kojima would come up with on his own. Perhaps this is simply clarification that Face Off is one of the most absurd flicks ever made. Right off the bat, you'll recognize the dulcet tones of metrosexual vampire extraordinaire Kiefer Sutherland, playing a bandage-faced man named Ishmael. Unfortunately, if you follow the development of this game, you know that Kiefer was voicing Snake, so you immediately know you're not even playing this game as Big Boss himself. Also, your character's missing an arm, so as if you needed any more evidence, right? After you escape the hospital, after a floating kid in a straitjacket and some kind of super fire monster attempts to stop you, you're greeted by Revolver Ocelot, who helps you escape to your new home, a giant base in the middle of the ocean which looks a lot like something Bruce Willis would hang out at in Armageddon. You've also got a new PMC, the Diamond Dogs, who seem to be named as such because there are diamonds hidden all over the base. You also get a dog, who you name Diamond Dog, and is a member of the Diamond Dogs. Finally, a Metal Gear Solid game that makes sense. And then the real plot begins. The game teeters between some pretty straightforward military-style missions and batshit crazy, fights freaky monsters who seem completely out of place missions. The Phantom Pain is open world, and when you're dropped into Afghanistan, it seems, for the first time, to take Metal Gear away from the absurd and try to be a little bit more sedated and realistic, and at times that's certainly the case. There are plenty of cliched mundane tasks, such as rescuing prisoners and blowing up bad guys' vehicles. But then you run into these dudes called the Skulls, who seem to be a mix of Brian Boitano and Mr. Smith from The Matrix. It's as if Kojima saw a shrink who prescribed powerful antipsychotics, and the majority of the game has him writing the story while being on these meds. But then one morning he forgets to take the 35 pills he was prescribed, and he starts writing insane shit about kids with psychic abilities, dudes on fire, men with no faces who wear hats, and weapons which only murder people who speak English. Let's keep the story simplified. Your nemesis in this game is a freaky, faceless guy named Skullface, which you would think would be an insult, kind of like Fat Bastard in the Austin Powers movies, but I guess it's not. I guess they embrace these names. So he's developed this parasite which kills people who speak English, and you have to stop him. A simplified version of the story, obviously, but explaining it any deeper would just confuse me to a point where I need to call Kojima's shrink and get some of the good stuff. My biggest issue with Skullface isn't his name, though that's a minor issue, but the fact that he has no face in a game where, from the beginning, we see two characters who, they themselves, may in fact have no face. I actually wondered if Skullface would turn out to be Snake, and he inserted you into the Diamond Dogs to sniff out a traitor. I know it sounds crazy, but which part of this game isn't completely nuts? Then you've got Quiet, who received a lot of flack when her outfit was first debuted a couple of years ago. Kojima Studios promised her whorish attire would make sense, but the reasoning you get is even more ridiculous than the reason of, she's just a damn whore. In the game, she suffocates if she wears clothes. That's why she has to be half naked. Seriously, that's their reason. Let's be honest, Kojima's a pervert. Nothing nothing wrong with it, but he is. Just admit it. Don't make the story any wackier than it already is by coming up with a silly excuse for one of your leads to be half naked. After all, you have one female in the entire game, and she's the one that can't breathe if she wears clothes. I don't see Ocelot running around in a thong. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Once you complete the game, you're actually just completing Chapter 1. The game continues from that point, having you replay earlier story missions with some new ones sprinkled in. Yeah, it's cool the story continues, but none of it makes any sense. Characters are back at their original points, some of which were even dead by the end of Chapter 1. It's like you did a Fulton wormhole extraction on yourself and ended up in a parallel universe. Okay, the story is nuts, Kojima's nuts. This isn't news. This happens a lot in Japanese games. I play games to have fun anyway. I can give the story a free pass if the gameplay is awesome. Fortunately, the gameplay in The Phantom Pain is very good, although it's not without its issues. That's the strange thing about this game. I can find 200 things to complain about, and maybe 10 things to love, and yet before this year is through, I'll most likely have poured 150 plus hours into it, and it'll be some of the most fun I've had with the game in years. One complaint I do have is having to get on and off the helicopter anytime I want to go somewhere, and because of the structure of the map, particularly the Afghanistan map, I find myself doing it way too frequently. I understand the immersion of not just selecting a spot on the map and teleporting there instantly, but come on, this is a Metal Gear Solid game. I'm fighting giant robots and a dude with no face. It's obviously not a simulation. Maybe I should just Fulton myself. They should have done that. The game is so detailed, I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't a feature that I'm completely missing out on. Maybe in a patch. The Afghanistan map design is very frustrating. It kind of reminds me of Far Cry 2. You're forced along the roads because mountains block any shortcuts, and you're constantly being interrupted by respawning checkpoints. The difference here is that you'll enjoy hitting up the checkpoints because you can Fulton out the bad guys to build up your army. The controls work great, and that's saying something since many Japanese developers don't seem to want to copy the standard American shooter control scheme which games like Call of Duty popularized. Kojima caved in, thankfully, and it's a game I could not play for an entire month, then pick it right back up and not scream, "How the fuck do I aim my fucking gun?" The stealth is insanely fun. Enemies are properly dumb, which isn't an insult. It means you can get pretty close without alerting them. If they are alerted, the game goes into a slow motion, briefly giving you a chance to take them out silently. If you're able to do that, you can continue sneaking at your leisure. When you knock out an enemy, you can recruit them into the Diamond Dogs by using a Fulton device, aka a portable balloon which whisks them back to Mother Base. Every soldier you recruit has stats, so you can put them in the department which best suits their abilities, and in turn offering you more upgrades and intel in the field. Anytime you find an elusive S-rank soldier, you'll feel a rush of excitement so few games have accomplished, especially recently. Building up Mother Base is good fun, although the cost of building platforms will force you to Google glitchy ways to earn resources fast. I'm sure many of you have hit up the airport for the unlimited amounts of fuel resources. I know I have. But even then you're at the mercy of those resources having to be converted from raw to processed, which can take quite a while. You just have to sit and wait it out. There are an insane number of unlocks in this game, everything from grenade launchers to mystical wormhole Fulton devices to extraction helicopter upgrades to outfits, even for your dog. If you like achievements and trophies, there's one for buying a ton of upgrades. You've also got buddies, a horse, a dog, a whore, and a robot. The dog is the best since he can do stealth kills. Yes, it's hilarious when he pulls a knife out of his dog shirt to murder people. You've got 2 maps to explore, and they're both a decent size, although it all really looks the same. There's just not a lot of variety here in the visuals. It is very nice that the game runs at 60 frames per second, but the visuals do take a hit for the doubled frame rate. I'm okay with that, but again, more variety would have been nice. That being said, at no point did I become bored with this game. Yes, the Phantom Pain is confusing, and none of it makes any sense. And the tradition of this possibly being Kojima's love letter to bad movies, maybe he's paying homage to another film with Phantom in the title. You know, the one with midi-chlorians. That's just a little joke. A bad one, but a joke nonetheless. The trend ends, however, when you get the chance to kill Skullface himself. It's one of the best revenge sequences I've seen in a game, honestly. You blow his arm and his leg off. Yeah, it reminded me of Murphy getting killed in RoboCop, but at least that was a good movie, and I guess he didn't really get killed after all. Hey, neither did Skullface because he comes back a couple chapters later. Strange. Despite the confusery of the plot, this game is fun. The thing that really keeps it together is a sense of density. The Mother Base stuff is really cool, and building it up helps you in the field. Research and development means you can buy more upgrades, for example. There's also a moderately convoluted forward operating base multiplayer system where you can make another Mother Base and players can invade it. Most players will probably never touch it, but you're forced to make an FOB anyways, which means other players will be stealing stuff without the defender having much of a chance to save their loot. The other problem with FOBs is that you can see your target's security level as well as all the resources you can steal before you commit to infiltrating the base. So you just pick a base where they have no security and lots of resources. You're in and out in a couple of minutes. Believe me, I did this a lot, and very rarely did anyone ever try to come back and get revenge against me, because I think most people just don't bother with the forward operating base system. There's also Metal Gear Online, which I've yet to play, so I'm not factoring it into this review. Maybe one day. Here's the rub. The Phantom Pain is a highly enjoyable game that's weird as hell. And if you don't try to take it too seriously, you'll have a ton of fun with it. Is it a masterpiece, as some gaming websites have claimed? Of course not. In some ways, it almost seems like an intentional parody of a masterpiece, or killer app. Remember we used to use that term? Now we say AAA, as if we've given up on the industry giving us something amazing ever again. If I were giving this game a numerical score, I'd say shut off your brain and enjoy this 9 out of 10. But if you're under the impression that a game needs a great story to entertain you, not only are you not much of a gamer, but you're looking at a significantly lower score. This game writes a different kind of story, the kind where years from now you'll be talking to your friends about it in retro Facebook groups, and in turn bringing it to a new generation of gamers. Also, what the fuck is up with credits at the end of every single mission?